And this is something I actually do incorporate into my books, these 3 volumes. I'm not afraid to speculate a little bit on their behalf. I think it's fair.
Sure.
And my
Absolutely.
speculation is they're watching us and they're like, these humans, they don't stop. They don't stop. And so they're adapting to us because I think it is very evident that they are not interested in having an open communication with us. I think that is
It's
very
interesting.
strong. Yeah, I think they're not into it. I think that they are extremely secretive about what they are doing. That might or might not mean they're hostile. I have no idea. They are definitely observing.
Sure.
They're
Sure.
definitely observing us. They're definitely, to some extent, I think, interested in monitoring our planet, just as many of us are. We realize we've got an amazing planet here. We've got an incredible amount of eco diversity. Uh, I've got a USO case from 1953. If guys in the Amazon, deep into the Amazon jungle, and there's a major body of water there, and they see, 1953, a kind of elongated craft on the water. They're looking inside and they see beings that look human, very young, very fit, very like youthful, and those types of reports happen. And there was like 6 or 7 people in there, basically maximum occupancy based on the size of this craft.
Yeah.
And they said the thing just took off and zipped the hell out of there. But where they were was in one of the most ecologically rich places on planet Earth.
Sure.
And I don't think that's a coincidence that these people, beings, whatever they were hanging out in that region. I think there's only one
For that
reason to
purpose.
be there, because it's an
Yeah.
incredibly ecologically rich place. And so
Sure.
they're checking it out. And there's other
Yeah.
cases like that where I think they're monitoring the ecosystem of our world.
No, that's an interesting thought. I've had those conversations as well. The purpose of it. And, do you think that maybe these beings have been here? Well, I know we said potentially, and I kind of agree that if, again, I'm in a different camp. I'm not sure if it's all entirely true, but if it were true, I'm in that world right now. Let's assume this is all true. It makes sense that there would be multiple species. Do you think at least one or all of them have been, under the water the whole time, whatever, living on Earth, and we've sort of developed more than they thought we would,
Right.
and are just trying to, make this work somehow on here, but eventually those two worlds are going to collide, and there's no,
Yeah.
Way around it.
I can't
I don't
tell how
know.
long they've been down there. When I
That's
look at
crazy. Oof.
ancient UFO aerial reports,
Yeah.
I'm kind of hard on the ancient aliens thesis. Let me just say that. And there's a lot of folks in the UFO community. They don't really like my position on this, but I don't care at this point. I'm not here to debunk ancient aliens. I think that there are some very good ancient stories. Can't really
Sure.
call them reports or cases because they weren't really investigated, but they're interesting stories that I would say, yes, seems credible to me and believable. That something unusual and, let's say, anomalous was happening. Some of them are in ancient early Europe. Some of them are in early Japan and China. They recorded some very good ones over there. And maybe India, but definitely they're out there where people were writing these things down. So, and you got some interesting like oral history tradition from native tribes in North America.
Yeah.
Certainly, you want to take all of these into account. So there's something at least to go on, but in terms of water-based, there's much less. And what I can say is I wouldn't rule it out as an impossibility that there are ancient underwater bases, but I really can't say that I've got evidence for that, because I haven't not found any.
Sure.
What I believe I have evidence for is reasonably reliable testimony going back a little over 300 years, and quite possibly earlier. There's the Christopher Columbus sighting that he had just before he made landfall.
Yeah.
And I actually discussed that in this book. It's not an official case, but I spent a few pages talking about it. And
Yeah.
it is interesting.
I
And
agree.
it's potentially anomalous, but it's also potentially not. And
Sure.
I go on both sides of that. So it's not impossible that we've
That
got
they've
a
been
more
here.
ancient aspect. And, keep
Yeah.
in mind, we humans, we've only been really traversing the large oceans for the last few centuries. I mean, yeah, there were the
Sure.
Vikings, there was a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, we were landlubbers hugging the coastline. There's a few bodies of
100%.
water. The Mediterranean, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Parts of the East or South China Sea, yeah, to some extent. Uh, the Arabian Sea, connecting the Middle East to India, yes,
Yeah.
especially along the coastline there. So those will go back a few thousand years, but no one was crossing the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean.
They didn't even know how big the world was or that it was round. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah,
And the
absolutely. You're right.
amount of traffic was also way less, far, far
Sure.
less. So
Sure.
you're not going to get as many opportunities. So we don't really know, and
Yeah.
that's a big black hole in our knowledge. It's tough to say how far back this goes in the ocean. I don't really know how to make
Yeah.
a conclusion there.
And no, I'm with you. I always think about this. Speaking of Spain earlier, there's a part of there's a trip in Spain and Europe you can take. It's mostly in Spain. Your sister would know about it. It's called El Camino de Santiago, and I took it. I have a tattoo here. You get an arrow.
Sweet.
You basically I walk like 600 miles on foot in Spain. Right, every day you walk in a lot, just staying in hostels and sleeping outside and you just walk the whole country on foot. It's the most amazing experience. And
That's
it's
awesome.
it's an old trail. There's many trails, but it goes back to the day of the apostles and Jesus. I mean, it goes back a long time.
Okay.
And that's what it's for. Like it was the St. Paul used to take that trip. And
In Spain? In Spain?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
So,
didn't think he ever went that far.
he's buried in Santiago de Compostela, which is in Galicia, northern part of Spain.
Shows how much I know.
Um, Oh, please. I didn't know any of this either.
Okay.
And there's a part at the end of the trip
I thought
where
he died in Rome. I thought, right? Wasn't he supposedly killed
that's
in
the
Rome?
story. That's the story that's
Okay, well,
there.
whatever.
Maybe it's they've been lying this whole time. I don't know,
What do I
you
know?
know.
What do I know? I'm not going to argue.
But look up El Camino when you're done. You'll be like, "Oh, this is crazy." Like
Very
the story
interesting.
behind yeah, it's thousands of people take it yearly. And it goes through all of Europe, but mainly it's in Spain and it ends in Santiago de Compostela. That's why it's
Gotcha.
called El Camino de Santiago. So, but anyway, after you get to Santiago de Compostela, there's an extra 30 kilometers that you can take that people really like that finalizes the trip and you go to the ocean, right? To the
Mhm.
end. And Finisterre just means like end of earth, right? Fin and stera, like terrain, right? So end of the earth. And that they call it Finisterre because they thought that was the end of the earth. That when you reach the ocean there, that's it. Don't go out there. You will fall off the edge. And I always think about that because we are in another Finisterre moment in life and humanity, right? There's another reality that we don't know. We think, you go out there, you're going to fall off the edge of the earth. There is no more. This is it. It's water from here on out. But the truth was, no, there was a whole other part of the world
Yeah.
that had yet to be discovered, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're in that same moment.
Well,
What is out there past that horizon? But to me, there is something. I don't think there's not anything. I think even if I don't, there is some phenomena that I just don't know what's happening. I can't
well,
explain it. That
consider
Finisterra, right? That line. Yeah. Something.
consider that and I got this directly from Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who a lot of people know who he is. He was for a while the U.S. Navy's top oceanographer, and he knows the oceans. So what he said to me is that, yeah, we have mapped about 25% of the ocean floor worldwide to a satisfactory extent scientifically, and I don't even know how they do this, but 5% of the ocean's volume. So when you think about it, like you get down into the water, especially if you're below 200 feet down, it starts getting dark really fast. The
Oh
sunlight
yeah.
doesn't penetrate, and it is murky as anything. Like it's not like you have any visibility down there. You have no visibility.
And the pressure, right? The water pressure.
The water pressure will will prevent any submarine from going down, more than like maybe
Worse than
maximum
space.
2,000 feet at the most for some of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's probably the limit, and maybe not even that much. And keep in mind the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean or the Indian Ocean, they go down about 15,000 feet or more.
Yeah.
You're talking
Yeah.
3 miles. Sometimes in the case of the Mediterranean, it's only 10,000 feet. Gee, only 2 miles. Big. That's very deep. So it's very hard to get down there. The pressures are overwhelming. It's dark. You need electronic detection capabilities. You need sonar, which we can do. I don't know what other really excellent technologies they have to like perceive things. There's sonar, and that is
Sure.
quite useful. And we've got very good algorithms now to detect digitally what this sound might mean as opposed to that, and so forth. And I'm sure there's other technologies as well that I don't even know about. But still, like, there's just a lot of mystery down there. I don't think we haven't really tracked most of this vastness. And so there's a lot of opportunity for a great unknown whatever to be down there.
Oh, I agree. Let's briefly talk about these alien bases that I did hear you bring up in the Jeremy Corbell interview, actually, because I made a video about it. I was like, oh, alien base. I love talking about alien bases.
Oh, right.
For,
Yeah.
For Danny Sheehan talk about it, extensively, made several videos on it. I just find that idea so fascinating that there could be these bases that are just right under our nose and all over the place. So let's just kind of break in. Like, what is when we say alien base, like, what are we saying exactly?
I think that's a great question. I think I don't know that I can say I know exactly where they are. Some people might feel that way, but I can say I've got a pretty decent guess as to where I think they probably would be based on the activity that I have recorded in my research. I have on my Google Earth, I have a yellow pin on every single case with the date, when it happened, and so forth.
Wow.
I've got them organized by decade. I can say I want to look at all the cases from the 1960s, and I can do that. So it's very well organized. So I can say that there's a few places that look very interesting to me. One is north of Puerto Rico. If I had to throw money down at any one location, I would say somewhere near the Puerto Rico Trench, which, by the way, is super, super deep. It goes down over 25,000 feet, talking more than 5 miles. It's, I think, the second deepest trench in the world. Marianas Trench in the Pacific is deeper.
It's the deeper, yeah.
But the Puerto Rico Trench is very large, very deep. It goes for a long way, too. And we are not able, I mean, other than through like really special operation, you get a really good bathysphere, you can go down there. But practically speaking, we don't have submarines that can go down there. No way.
Sure.
There nonetheless has been a lot of activity reported in and around that area. I would be surprised, honestly, if there were not some kind of semi-permanent or kind of permanent non-human operation there or location. It does seem to be a place where they clearly feel it's safe for them to hang out, because who's going to mug them down there? No one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
It's funny.
That was an old Evander Holyfield line.
Yeah.
I think it was from Seinfeld. He's talking to George Costanza, and he said something like, "Who's going to mug me?" I'm like,
yeah,
no one's going to mug you, Mr.
You're right.
Yeah. But anyway, I've always thought of that. But there's another place, Catalina Island, off Southern California coast.
I've covered that.
No question.
Near Baja, right?
Yeah, north of Baja, California, but
north of Baja, yeah.
Off the LA, off of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Area there. You have the Channel Islands, and the most well-known of those is Santa Catalina Island. There's others, and there's other activity in those, but Catalina Island definitely has the most of all of the Channel Islands, and some very, very weird, interesting reports come out of there. Quite a few, especially since the 1970s, although a few earlier. It really gets kind of heavy duty in the 1980s and onward, as far as reports.
Sure.
And I suspect that there's something there. There's a base down there. There's other places, though.
But do you think, like, and that's a reasonable logical, path to take that you're taking, right? You've seen a lot of activity in one particular spot. Okay. But it could, I mean, since we're spitballing here, it could mean just that there's something there that they like to go to. Doesn't necessarily mean that there would be a
That's
base
right.
there because there's so
Could
much
be.
activity.
Yeah.
But I think it's reasonable to also put that in there as a consideration that
Well,
they might have some sort of, galactic helipad, if
there,
you will,
there's
there, right?
there's something that Catalina Island and Puerto Rico have in common, which is that you've got a big U.S. Navy presence in both of those areas, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to ask yourself when
Isn't
I
that where
look
the
at
Tic Tac happened incident near there,
close, yeah,
roughly?
the Tic Tac was off of Baja. It was
Yeah,
not
that's
that
right.
far, not that
Yeah.
far from that whole area. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a genuine, I think, a genuine USO element to that. That's going into my third volume, in that case. But there are, you've got a U.S. Navy connection in many of these, and you have to ask, like, okay, could these USOs be U.S. Navy tech? Are they working with something very advanced? I've asked
Sure.
myself this question many times. I don't think the answer is yes. I think the answer is no. What I think is that the tech is monitoring the United States Navy. That makes a lot of sense to me because one of the things that I think they are doing is they are monitoring our technological development and our capabilities, and that has to include military capabilities. So you would look at the U.S. Navy, of course you would.
Sure. Sure.
You would look at the Soviet Russian Navy, and they've got their collection of cases, quite a few. So I think that's actually what's happening. But there's other places where I think there are bases. I believe probably off the Atlantic coast of South America, maybe near Buenos Aires. I would take a guess. There's some very interesting cases and reasons to think there's something there. A lot of researchers in that area believe there's a base there. Doesn't seem illogical to me. But then, there's other locations. You've got the South China Sea, which is all the way out, in Asia.
Yeah.
And that's not an impossibility to me. There's a fair amount of activity there. Also, there's some crazy activity in the northern central Pacific, like off the Aleutian Islands. You're talking middle of nowhere. There's nothing there. But
Yeah.
there's military interest there because you're between Russia and the United States, and
Sure.
it's so it's geostrategically
Is that up
important.
north more, like off Alaska? Like,
Yeah.
some,
So it's
you know,
very it borders with what's called the Bering Sea up there, and that's
yeah.
not a tourist destination. We'll just put it that way. It's a very
No, my
very
father was in the Air Force and he was stationed out there in some weird little island off
maybe
Alaska
there's an
between
island.
Russia and Alaska.
There's Adak Island, ADAK, which is one that was you had a military base there for the U.S. for a long time. And in fact, the
They
very first
monitored like missiles or something. That's I remember him telling. He's rest in peace. My father passed 10 years ago, but I remember all the stories growing up because he just hated that he was stuck out there in the
yeah,
freezing,
it sucked.
whatever. But yeah, it sucked. Oh, it
It
sucked.
absolutely sucks.
He said it was horrible. They
It's not a
basically
good.
lived underground. He said,
I
essentially.
wonder. Did he say the
But yeah, there
Aleutian
was.
Islands?
I don't remember the exact.
Yeah,
It's been so long, I can't remember. But it was a base, and they were basically monitoring. He said any activity from Russia, missiles being
yeah,
shot over to America. If that happened, they would be, the first ones to see it. In
yeah,
fact, he
yeah.
even said they shot a missile one time, and they had to take care of it. And I was like, that's not in the news. There's no story of that during that time when my dad was. He's like, I don't know. That happened. I was there.
Oh,
It did happen.
totally
I'm like,
believe it.
oh, that's crazy
I
that
wonder where he
how
was.
many things happen like that that don't, right, become public knowledge